Welcome to Play Pause Turn. In this podcast, we discuss all things to do with TV, films, games and literature. We give our thoughts on the media we've been enjoying, old or new, and comment on anything topical. Hello, and I'm joined today. My name's John. I'm joined with Alex, and just us two today. This is going to be a kind of a how was it the celebrity? Was it celebrity
death
boxing?
match?
Celebrity death match between you and me on a slightly different approach. So rather than TV, films, games and literature, we're going to be looking at a bit of tech today. We're going to be looking at the tech that I like compared to the tech that Alex likes, and a bit in between. I'll be more specific after our intro question. So, Alex, I've completely dropped you on this, completely without any preparation for you at all. You have a choice, okay? Are you a touchscreen guy or are you a peripheral input guy?
Oh, I'm a touchscreen guy, definitely. I'm really happy with the touchscreen. In fact, I miss it on my laptop, which confuses people because they go, "Why would you have that?" But it's just nice when you're like closing things or swipe. It's just nice. So yeah, I'm definitely a touchscreen guy.
Well, I see. I think touchscreens are great, but I think I spend most of my time, my working life, using an input device, which is a stylus or a pen.
Interesting.
Because I use a Surface Go with a Surface Pen for marking all my work. Now all my kids booked electronic, so I would say, and I still do like a mouse over a trackpad. I think the trackpad is nearer to a touchscreen experience. And I think I could live without touchscreens because there's always controllers, games controllers as well, aren't there?
Yes, very true.
I'm not a big fan of touchscreen gaming, so I think I err on the side of peripherals, really. And I've got a few mad peripherals in my house to do with gaming as well that generally don't get used very much. I've got a VR gun and I've got one of those Ring Fits that got squeezed maybe once or twice over Christmas. And I have a sort of a half broken VR headset that's been thrashed about a bit. So I definitely think I'm a peripheral guy, actually.
I think we're probably quite similar.
Yeah.
But I think going for touchscreen just because of the things that I'm using at the moment.
So we are going to have a bit of a showdown today. We are going to be looking at, with all the recent releases and recent news in tech, we're going to do a few comparison discussions. And so we're going to sort of start this off with the new iPhone 14 Pro versus the Samsung Fold 4. Now, ironically, I'm still on the iPhone 13. I know a lot about the iPhone 14. Alex has. He has a Samsung Fold 4 and he has an iPhone 14, which I think he's got through work. So he's just flat. They're very shiny and new, aren't they? Look at those.
They are very shiny.
Lots of purple there. I think Apple's latest background is a sort of purple background.
I love purple, so that's good for me.
The colour of frustration, apparently, purple. No, me neither. So let's have a talk about this. Now, I as you can probably remember from if you've been a regular listener from a previous podcast, I smashed my iPhone 12 in the door of a car last summer, and I was a bit annoyed because I was going to hold out for the iPhone 14. I was going to hold out until my 12 until the 14 came out, but I had to, for obvious reasons, I had to get a new phone, and I went for the 13 because in the couple of months before the next refresh, the price of the phone was quite reasonable, and I do love it. I love my iPhone, but I have been listening and watching and testing and fiddling at some of the Apple stores with the iPhone 14. And
you bought what you needed at the time.
I bought what I needed at the time.
If your phone breaks, you need to buy a new phone.
I mean, I would have got the 14 if I'd been able to hold on to the 12, rather than sort of jamming it in a door. I'm not too upset though. I don't know if for me at the moment the 14 warrants a massive upgrade for me.
It sounds quite an iterative upgrade. There are a couple of key features, but if you've already got a 13, then you'll be happy.
Yeah.
And I think it's even less if you go for the 14, normal 14, not the Pro. I think if you go for the normal 14, you're better off getting the 13 Pro, just because it's got better hardware.
I mean, I'm not a Max guy. There's always people who are they prefer the larger ones. I I'll come to it later on why I don't like having a big phone. It used to be with the Pro phone, if you didn't go for the Max, you'd kind of miss out on a better processing speed and a better camera. But Apple have pretty much reached parity with their Pro devices. Obviously, the Pro and the Pro Max, the big difference is really the battery size and battery life.
Yes.
So, I think the things that would be nice to have if I had the 14 are probably the upgraded pixel count on the camera, the 48 megapixel camera, and obviously the dynamic island, which is actually, I think for me, the nicest thing about the new iPhones is the kind of notch moving down to this very clever hole punch that also becomes an animated kind of live notification.
It's such an Apple thing to do, isn't it? Because what they did is they took what might be considered a drawback and they made it into a feature, which is typical Apple. Functionally, there's no functional difference. It's just they had to put the sensors and stuff somewhere, and they decided to put them lower in the on the phone. So so you're absolutely right. But when you're doing something, I can see it making sense.
Yeah, I think it's quite Apple-y to turn what has in the past been a kind of a black mark against their screens, because obviously other phones and non-Apple phones have really pared down the missing pixels on the front of their screen by having hole punches and things.
Yeah.
But I think it's quite clever they've turned it into a feature that kind of hides it with black graphics that sort of animate around it.
Yeah, and it's just clever because it's an OLED screen, so the thing with the OLED screen is it's black when it's off, so it really is effective. You don't see a border or anything really. You don't notice that because the rest of the screen's so bright. So
Apple call it a shape-shifting, multitasking, head-turning, game-changing iPhone experience, which is very Apple hyperbole. Yeah, Alex has his head in his hands right now.
But they're really getting bad at writing copy.
Yeah,
but
well,
we'll talk
they're
about
running out
that
of things
later.
to say, aren't they? They're running out of hyperbole. But I think it's quite impressive. I think that's the one thing I quite enjoy. The always-on screen. How do you find that? I mean, I don't. I like it on my watch. We'll talk about that later on. I don't find it something I miss. Generally speaking, I quite like having my phone black and hidden away when I'm working or doing other things. In fact, if I'm watching television or playing games, whatever, and in the corner of my vision, my iPhone keeps lighting up, I find that quite annoying. Do you find that the always-on display is distracting, or is it calm enough?
Yeah, because that's it. This is it off.
Yeah,
and it just looks a bit dimmer.
Yeah,
and the thing is, if you compare it to a Android devices generally have a black screen, and then they just have the battery and the time, and they're super configurable. But it's like I don't understand the value that brings, apart from it looks nice, and I get that some people like that.
Yeah.
But for me, it just distracts because
you can turn it off.
So you can, and the other thing that you can do, which a lot of people forget about, is just turn it on its face so that it's facing down, and then it won't use it at all. So it'll just switch off.
Right, and that saves battery life as well, I guess.
Yeah, and they did battery tests of it, and the thing is that I think the displays are a little bit better on iPhones. Sorry, not the displays, but the optimization is better on Apple. So it really takes like 5% or something, quite small. So long as you get through the day without any problems, having always on display probably you won't notice.
Yeah.
I think it's different on Android devices because the biggest problem with Android devices is that they run in the background a lot of things, and that means that they drain pretty quickly anyway if you're not careful. So I think they've got bigger problems, whereas for Apple, they're just they have super strict rules about how often they check and stuff like that. So it makes it a lot easier. If you put the clock on there with the second hand, for example, it will just disappear which
is like the watch, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, just like the watch.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is they've got really good at this based on what they've done with the watch. So it's like they've taken what's working and they've just brought that across.
Yeah, I mean the widgets on the screen. I think they've obviously taken the idea from the complications on the Apple Watch.
Yes.
I do, and obviously I have on my iPhone 13. I have iOS 16. Is that right? It's iOS 16 now, isn't it? It's not 16.1 yet. That's the new release. It's coming up very soon with a few extra features like the live updates on the screen. But I don't know how often I really even look at those widgets. I've got a weather app. I've got my battery life on my Apple Watch, so I can look at that without looking at my watch. And I've got the coolest thing I found actually, which I think I found on The Verge, which is a single button that has come from the newly updated Google Search app. Ironically, Google.
Oh, right.
Google's got one of the best widgets, and I can touch that widget, and basically wherever I am in the world, it finds the nearest coffee shop, and that's just what I set up as.
I find that the selection of widgets is quite limited.
Yeah.
Obviously, it depends how many apps you've got installed. So I don't have that many on that because that's not my main phone. But yeah, so I find that a bit more limited. I think at the start there's all this interest in this, but I think in widgets. But I think now, app developers are really getting to the point where they're burnt out a bit. They really have to prioritize stuff. So these kind of nice to haves aren't getting high up on the list right now.
I wonder though if there's very few of these screen widgets. If you're the developer who develops a really cool one that stands out from the crowd, now is a good time to do it. Surely
for Apple developers, this is now a good time to do it. But I think you'll find that you'll get the most benefit from the always on status updates. I think that's the one because it's quite universal. And I think that you'll definitely get usage for that for cab firms, anything to do with travel is going to be ideal for that.
Have you had a chance to test the crash detection yet?
No. I mean, my understanding is it only goes off when you're on a roller coaster. That's right, isn't it? I think it's rather sensitive, but.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's a nice principle, but no one asked for it. So I feel like it's one of those things that you didn't know you needed, but actually you probably still don't need. It's the same thing with the satellite connection.
Yeah.
I think the idea of talking via satellite to say, "Oh, I'm up the top of a mountain, but I'm okay," is a brilliant idea. Like I can see that working, and now that we've got proliferation of things like Starlink coming in, and over the next few years, I can definitely see the opportunities for that. But also, it's a feature that no one's asked for, and it's good. But is it a feature that would make you want to buy a new phone? Probably
if you're in the
not.
UK, definitely not, because it's not available in the UK yet.
Well, there you go. So I mean, I've not seen it work, but yeah, so it's kind of these things are lovely, but they're very focused on people hiking in the Appalachian Mountains
or being terrible drivers.
That's it. Or this is it. Or being a stereotypical American driver on a long journey.
The technology in the crash detection I find fascinating. Obviously, a lot of it's been developed and iterated from the fitness and how the accelerometer tests. So there's a new type of accelerometer in the iPhone 14 that can send extreme accelerations and decelerations, which I think is what the problems with the roller coasters were. I mean, decelerations of up to 256 G, which is pretty impressive, but it also looks at cabin pressure and drastic
your
changes in
organs would have problems with that.
And also it actually takes the sound levels of impact, so it listens to sounds as well. So if you're watching a film, like if you're watching stock car racing very close to the screen, and it can hear sounds of collision, that might also affect. I'm not sure that.
Maybe this is stuff that they were working on for an Apple car, and then they thought to themselves, "We're not going to get there. We'll just put that into a phone." I don't know.
My concern is that Apple has said they've got 1 million hours of real world driving and crash data to help them. Now, crashing for 1 million hours is quite serious, isn't it? They've got pots of cash, so I guess maybe all the failed cars they made, Apple cars they made, they can test and crash.
That Tesla should think about this as a feature.
Yeah,
they should just go, well, look, when you have a crash, we know you've got a crash, and we make this really funny noise, and you can configure it, you can change it. It can be a whoopee cushion, it can be a it could be quite fun. I'm not sure everyone will like that though.
No. I think before we move on and look at the Samsung, sorry, it's the Galaxy Fold 4, isn't it? We're going to look at next. I think
Yes, we will.
we should just very quickly talk about the camera. Camera features are what generally sell phones. I think people are always upgrading for the better camera, and the camera on the iPhone 13 is brilliant. The new camera in the Pro, I don't think they get this in the standard version. I think it's just in the Pro. Has a 48 megapixel quad pixel sensor, which basically means that if you take a shot at normal zoom, at high quality, and I think you have to have it set to ProRes as well to do this. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'll check that. It basically it can take 4 times the resolution because 4 times the amount of pixels are taking that shot. So it means that when you digitally zoom on an area, you're zooming in a higher quality image than before. So you can actually
what it does
really
is
cool.
the same thing. It does pixel binning, which is where when you're taking normal photos, it takes those 4 pixels and then works out the right pixel to use.
So then it's
and that way
data and processing, is it?
Well, it not just data, but it also gives you a richer image. So if you rely, basically, because the sensors are fairly small comparatively, what happens is that one pixel isn't enough information, whereas 4 pixels is 4 times the size, so you get a bit more information. And so then you can say, oh, it's actually a bit lighter because I can tell how light that area is. Yeah. Whereas if you've only got 1 pixel, you can you have to go with what you're given. Yeah. And so when you do a zoom, what it does is it just takes the native pixels when you're zooming in to give you a sharp image. Yeah. So it's a clever way of doing software zooming.
So it produces better data with essentially the same megapixel size because it's sort of fudging a little bit. Oh, that's clever. Yeah. That's clever. I think it gives the iPhone a little bit more control over the sort of photographs it takes because obviously, if you're doing a very high light, extreme midday sun picture, it'll use the pixels in one way by kind of gathering them together. But then if you're in low light, it will then use every single bit of data from the extra information. That's quite clever.
Yes.
I guess again that's exactly the advantage of Pro Raw, really, isn't it? But I think that's really good. And I think
it should use that even if you're just taking normal pictures. It's only when you zoom in that you need to do some special stuff.
The special sauce.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, even your normal pictures should look better. But we kind of forget that actually computational photography has been like taking all of this information and then working out what the color should be already for quite a while.
Yeah.
So actually, this is a nice improvement, but it's not as big a difference as you're used to because already the computers behind the scenes are working out what they think it should be, and they're making that the right color, and they've got pretty good at that now.
I mean, because the iPhone has got this new A16 bionic sensor or bionic chip in it, then that means there's better number crunching, which means things like the cinematic mode can now shoot in 4K HDR at 24 frames per second, and that's I have never really used the cinematic mode on the iPhone 13 once as a joke with some friends, but if you're a filmmaker or you take lots of videos for YouTube and so on, that's really cool.
But for videos, it would be great.
I'm more excited by the new kind of Steadicam function they have in the 14 Pro as well. That's really cool. And again, the next phone, the iPhone 15, will be even better and have better camera, and there'll be another cool little feature that we don't have right now. Before it was macro mode, now it's this quad pixel sensor, and I think there's rumours of the next phone having a telescopic lens down the side of the phone,
right? Okay.
So that they can get proper optical zooms in a phone without any extra bulk. Does that make sense? Imagine you've got like a tube down the side filled with the telescopic lens all the way down the side of the phone, and then a clever use of reflective mirrors and sensors means it's not sticking out of your phone; it's just working at right angles to your phone with the same kind of effect.
It could work, but I think the thing is you've got to remember that the bump is already quite big.
Yeah.
And they've already got pretty efficient as to what they put in the camera bump and the space underneath for the camera. So And you have to remember that that's also a problem that's already been solved. So the Samsung S22 Ultra and a number of others like the Huawei and that have all got telescopic lenses. And all they do is they just give it a bit more space and get a bit more space underneath before it gets to the display. So it's totally doable without doing it something wacky.
Well, I think they'd have to have a bigger phone, wouldn't they? I imagine a phone even bigger than the current Pro Max.
I don't think it is, because if you think about the size of, because I had the S22 Ultra before I got the Fold 4, so that's like the best telephoto zoom, within reason. But it wasn't much deeper than the 14 Pro is, including the bump. So it's just the only difference is that they had. Well, really, it really wasn't very much difference. Like this height of this phone probably would be an extra couple of millimeters. It's not as big a difference as you'd think, just to get that telephoto in, because they use that clever mirror. Yeah. And the sensor sits on its side, but you don't realise that. You just see a square bit where the camera bump is. But yeah, so I think it's a solved problem, but it's a question of whether Apple want to put quite an expensive piece into the Pro without bumping the price up further.
I don't think they have any issue about price bumping. We'll talk about that later on. I mean, I'm looking
but they would need to, because it's quite an expensive part.
Yeah, I'm looking at the display size of the current Pro Max. It's 6.7 inches diagonally. If you push that to 7 inches, that gives you a whole wedge down the side for the telescopic lens without too much, problematic rearrangement of innards. The one thing we haven't mentioned, and the real game changer, if I'd had the chance to get this, would be the purple phone. I would have gone for the purple colour, but it's
very pretty. I can't really show you it on.
It looks nice
here, but it looks basically, the best way to describe it is it's mostly black with a bit of purple in it. But it looks quite refined, so I quite like that. There is a very nice matte black as well, which is also good. So if you like your blacks,
it's texture, isn't it? It's a texture matte black.
Yeah. It's not good. It doesn't pick up fingerprints, which is good. Whereas a lot of phone backs do. I mean, I put mine in a case anyway.
See, I don't know. I've gone for the Virgin Phone life.
Ooh.
So my case is now Apple Care. If I smash it, then I just get a new phone. And it's the first time I've got Apple Care, actually. I'm walking away from the microphone here. It's the first time I've actually got Apple Care after I smashed the last one and had to fork out a fortune to replace it. So I'd rather spread that fortune out over months rather than one go. But okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to spend that, but no, that's good.
So let's talk about the Samsung Fold 4. Is it called the Samsung Fold or the Galaxy Fold?
So Samsung are not great with names. So if you give it its full name, it's the Samsung Galaxy, because all the phones are Galaxies.
Right.
So it's a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4, because it's the fourth iteration of the Fold series, and the Z shows that it's the most premium one. So it's like S22 is like the quite premium, but Z, they had to go to Z for foldables because they wanted to show it was even more premium.
What happens after Z? That's Z Plus.
Huh?
Z Plus next, do you think? Or
I think they'll just drop the Z. Well, I don't. I mean, you know what it's like. It's funny because we get confused about because Apple's generally pretty good at naming, so we just assume that everyone's good at naming now, but they're not.
I'll tell you who's the worst. The worst.
Most people just call it a Fold 4 because they drop the Galaxy and the Z because no one cares about that, and they might say, "Oh, it's a Samsung," because that's important if you to know that it's not just any old phone, because there are other foldable phones that are, made by other Chinese manufacturers that have different features, but they also have very different software experience. Whereas one of the good things about Samsung is they've got really good at Android, and so when you use it, I mean, can't really see on my phone because it just looks like a normal phone right now. But what got me with this is, I really wanted the extra screen real estate. I really wanted that. And I watched quite a lot of videos, but I watched them around the house. I watched them when I travel. And so I really wanted to make sure that I had something that would give me a good screen wherever I am.
Yeah.
And normally you'd just get a bigger phone. That's the normal thing. But it was getting a bit big. And so when I saw the Fold, there was the Fold and the Flip, which is the clamshell that goes folds top down. And I thought about that, and I thought, look, I don't really want a small phone. What I actually want is a normal phone that opens out and then gives me space to do whatever I want to do. So what's so good about this is that on the front, you've got a fairly narrow phone, but it's still an Android phone, just like normal, as you'd expect.
It doesn't have to be wide, does it? Because you're not using it as a screen up front. You're using it as an input device. What's
nice about this is it's actually easier to hold, because it's not quite as wide as it's very similar to. It's actually a little bit bigger than the 14 Pro. So the 14 Pro, it's narrower than the 14 Pro. So you've got 14 Pro, which is kind of just the perfect kind of size.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go up to max or anything like that. And then when you go to a Fold, what's nice is that the proportions get smaller because you can fold. So I find it's really easy to hold as a candy bar phone, really, and I really enjoy that. It's not amazing to type on, but it does work. It's perfectly workable. So I spend a lot of my time using it as a phone. And then what I do is when I open it out when I need it to, or like if I'm doing something where that extra screen real estate is helpful. And then all of a sudden you get the real benefit of it. So, for example, this is YouTube.
Yeah.
And so on YouTube, it gives you like a tablet view. So you see a big image and the like button and all that.
Yeah.
And then you've got the right-hand column. And if you just think, well, no, I just want a big image, you just zoom into it. And then all of a sudden you've got a really big image, like bigger than you'd have on like a Pro Max in terms of size. This is kind of
like in your hand now. It reminds me a bit like of some of the. Don't take offence here because it's size wise, like some of the Fire HD sort of tablets, which are sort of smaller for
it's like 7-inch tablet. Yeah, no, exactly right. It feels like a 7-inch tablet. It's not quite. It's a little bit. The proportions are a little bit smaller because this is. The proportions aren't quite 16:9, so they're slightly squarer than that.
So it's great for watching old retro BBC programmes 4:3 then.
Oh yeah. And anything that's 4:3 looks amazing. But what you can always do is, if depending on what you watch, you can always zoom in on YouTube anyway. So or Netflix or whatever. So long as what you're watching isn't the borders aren't going to matter, you can get that bigger experience if you want it. But I haven't felt like I've been missing out, really. And then what's great about this is you've also got stylus support. Now, there isn't anywhere to put a stylus on here, which is a bit of a shame.
It's all being used for folding, isn't it? The space.
Yeah, exactly. There just isn't space. And everyone's like, where will they put it? And if you take this out of the case, there's really very little to it, actually. And I think that's the bit that kind of worries a lot of people is that
where do you put the stylus then, Alex? Where do you store it?
Well, you have a couple of options. So hang on, so that's it without a case, and it is thin, like there's not much to it.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you've got a couple of options. So it comes with the stylus free. It comes with a case that can hold the stylus and also has a little mount.
Yeah.
So you can swap that in or out. Or you could just take the stylus and put it wherever you need it to. So it's the end of the day, it's like find what works and then do that. I prefer the case that I've got has got a little flap on it. I've taken it off, so you're going to now see it on without the phone. It's got a little flap for a kickstand, and that's brilliant for me because it just means that whenever I want to put it down in the kitchen or something, I can just put it on the kickstand, and all of a sudden I've got all of that space. So it really does make a difference, and I know that's just in a case. It's not particularly amazing case, but it's just what it came with it. It was just perfectly convenient. And what I found is that battery life is as good as a normal phone.
Yeah.
It's not the best battery life. So I went from a Samsung S22 Ultra, which is really chunky battery life. And on Android, you need that battery because you go through your battery quite quickly. this was like going down to like a Samsung S22 battery life. So it lasted a day, so long as you're careful.
Yeah.
But what's nice about it is it's wireless charging. You can just stick it on a pad.
Just going to ask you that, actually.
Yeah. So it's fully wireless charging, and it can do power share as well.
I suppose normal standard Qi charging, is it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's not fast, but then the thing with wireless charging is you do it because it's convenient. You don't do it for speed. If you want speed, you plug it in.
Yeah, it's topping up, isn't it, really? Or leaving
exactly.
it next to you for a while whilst you're having a coffee and doing something
Yeah,
else.
totally. So, what I thought about this, and I thought about this quite a bit because that was worrying me, battery life was worrying me. But what I found is that I settle down and I spend 90% of my time at home anyway. So what am I worrying about? Nothing really. So, and also when I'm on a call, I can just stick it on the wireless pad and it'll charge a bit while I'm on my call. So don't need it.
Sorry, in terms of ergonomics, can you stick it on a wireless pad and then flip it up like a laptop and use it whilst it's wireless charging?
Yeah, potentially, but it's tricky. So it is possible. If you have a pad that sits underneath it and then you want to use it, you could do that.
Have you got a vertical pad, have you?
No, my one is a flat one, so it would work. The only problem is it's just big, so it's really chunky.
So it might fall over.
It's balanced pretty well actually. And what's nice about it is the hinge is really stiff, so you can keep it at that level and like wave it around. It just doesn't move, which is really quite nice. And if you move it to another, it's still quite good. Yeah. So it's a lot more robust than people
realize. Alex is waving his phone around to prove the tightness.
Sorry, this is rubbish audio, but I'm just trying to explain. You know, that does make a difference. I think if this was floppy, then and it sounds weird, but some other foldables don't have that resistance on the hinge. And I think if that was the case, I think it would feel really fragile. Whereas, and it is nice, you know, to have the option of folding it out like this. But in reality, because I've got a case that has a stand, I just use the full height of it because why wouldn't you?
Can you? I'm just thinking about how it takes advantage of the folding. Can you, for instance, play games on it where the horizontal surface that's folded and set on the table is like a Nintendo DS touchpad, and the vertical as a screen, because that's quite cool. Because
if you want to,
the problem with a lot of like mobile gaming, and I was playing with a bit of XCloud the other night. I was waiting for my son to come back from Cubs, and I was playing a bit of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on XCloud on my phone. Because I discovered a bit of 5G where I was sitting, and it was great. I could play it, but all the controls are all like literally over about 80% of the screen, so you're touching it. So I would imagine that if you're into gaming and you like sort of mobile gaming, that you could use the bottom half of the screen as your controller and the top half as the screen.
You can, but the problem is the screen gets really small then.
Right,
because it's not
thinner, isn't it?
It's a lot smaller and as a space. So unless you're doing something important, you probably want the screen real straight. What I do is I just get a wireless controller, because you can actually get some that fit this or fit a phone, and so then you can just use proper controls, and then you don't have to worry about the touch screen because you're not using that. You're just using that as a screen. And they're not that expensive now. I mean, I bought one which fits the fold as well, so it's a bit of a beast when you put it all in. But it's basically the size of a Steam Deck, except I didn't buy a Steam Deck, so I saved money. So that was my rationale. So yeah, I mean, I think it can definitely work for gaming, and the screen is lovely on a fold. It's basically nice. as good as the Pro Max Pro screen, because they're all Samsung displays anyway.
So did you go for the grey green, the Phantom Black, or the beige?
I went for the black. I normally like the colours, but I'd previously had a burgundy. I'd had a burgundy S22 Ultra, and while it looked amazing for the first few weeks, it lost its shine by the end of it. So I was like, well, what do I go for? And then I felt like the black was a little bit more refined for a foldable, because it defines the colour of the spine, and although the edges are covered, the spine's quite a big part.
I'm just struggling to think who would buy a phone which is colour beige. Like beige is the colour of boredom, isn't it? And the colour of like
Yeah, it's weird.
Old Microsoft or old Intel computers that have faded with age, and people who are in retirement homes with wearing beige cardies and beige slippers. I mean, obviously, I'm not far off that to be honest myself, but so I can get away with saying that. But it just seems
I think
strange.
you do it if you like
colour.
the gold edge, because the thing is the trim around the edges.
Call it gold then, not beige, surely.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird.
But this really should just be called a gold. Because basing it on the edges, you've got basically silver.
It does look gold.
Black and then gold, and those are the colours. It's just the panel that's coloured is the back of the phone.
Yeah.
But so that's only a quarter of the phone because you've got so many sides.
Yeah.
So
now,
what I found with this is gaming's really good on it. There's some really good, even tablet games that have a large sized interface.
Yeah.
Like Railbound is what I've been playing recently, which is really good fun. They're great, and you can just do them. I just open them up, and it works really nicely. And then the other thing I found is, because it's got stylus, you can use it for notes.
Yeah.
And previously, I used to have a Samsung. Let me get this right. Galaxy S8 Tab Plus, I think it's called. I can't remember exactly, but the name is it was a Samsung tablet, and I used to have that for note taking at work because I didn't want to have notepads, and I really like to be virtual. So I had this tablet which has a wonderful screen, and I ended up selling it because I was like, I just don't need both. I just don't need them. And so actually, I mean, it's not saving me money, but it's just it just means that it's doing both those job. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with that. So for me, this is like a very complete, like the most complete phone I've had, because it has so many uses that I didn't realize that I had until I got it. So I do recommend it, but it is exceedingly expensive.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Samsung site now. You're knocking over $2,000 for this 2019 in the UK.
So yes and no.
Because I presume you traded your old phone in for this and got a bit of money off, did you?
Yeah. So the thing is, if you look at this,
you can
if
get
you look at the fold
discount
for
of
the moment,
£580, can't you? Something.
Yeah, for the moment, if you look at it, it's £1,600 or £1,700, which is a lot of money. But when
it's not far from the top range iPhone, though, is it?
No, it's not. And it comes with 256 gigs to start with anyway, which is fine. I mean, you probably wouldn't want masses more, but that's not a bad amount. It doesn't have an SD card, so
way better than starting at 64 like Apple do, though.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. Because they know that you're going to upgrade, so it's just a markup. They've factored in. But the thing is that Samsung are really good at trade-in discounts. So they gave me a lot of money for the phone. I can't remember. I think it was about £800 or £900 for this S22 Ultra that I had. Now that was almost pretty much more than it's worth, but it was just they obviously wanted to have an incentive.
Yeah.
They also gave me £100 off of another purchase, which I used towards buying a Galaxy Watch for Amy.
Well, hold on, because I know at the moment there's a deal where it gives you a free Galaxy Watch as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one option? You can choose one or the other as an option, or do you get all? I'm looking at the Samsung website, and you've got
Galaxy. They like you. Samsung like you to stack these. So what happens is that if you do it cleverly, you end up spending maybe £600 or £700 on a tablet, and then maybe you decide to spread that over 12 months. So that and all of a sudden it's not as much money as it sounds. I mean, it's obviously if you lose it, you're going to be hurting, so you want to get some insurance if you can.
Get some Samsung Care. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Samsung
exactly.
Care?
Just Samsung Care is the same as
Apple
Care, basically. Yeah. I mean, Samsung have done a good job of basically mirroring what Apple do. And then they just threw in the buds as well. Those buds. So they threw those in, and
it's that whole deal, isn't it?
And I also had a year's worth of Disney.
Oh, God.
So the thing is, when you tot all of this up, you're going, they're really, really pushing this.
Yeah.
It's
almost like $3,000 you're getting there.
Yeah, well, maybe not, but still, for the money, I'm not spending as much money on that, although it's a lot of money. The actual benefit, what you're getting from it, is quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I got a pack with the stylus as well. Whereas, like, if you buy an iPad, you pay for the pencil, don't you?
Well, you pay, I mean, another £100 for that, another.
So
£300
that's
for a
the thing.
keyboard.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually quite happy with the way Samsung's doing it, because they're so aggressive with the discounts, and because it was, you know, comparable money wise. So I think it worked out actually pretty well. I don't know if they'll keep being as aggressive as that, but yeah, that's what made it good. I mean, yeah. So I think for the Fold, it was like upgrading to a new phone, which I do yearly normally, which is a bit excessive maybe, but that's what I enjoy. So it was no different than that.
So it's a good deal by the looks of it. If you're a non-Apple, if you're not in the Apple ecosystem, it's a good foray into the high. I mean, it's obviously, this is the high end of what you can get in Samsung's quarters.
Yeah, it is. And we haven't even talked about the actual like the screen and the Fold and how that works. But the thing is, most of these things don't really get in the way. Yeah. So I haven't discussed it because it's really not been an issue. It's just been a great phone, and it just got a really nice sound to it. So
a snappy sound. And
yeah. So anyway,
they're banking on you now. You've got that foldable phone. That next time you upgrade to the next foldable phone. So they've got you into that sort of 2K ecosystem, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Would you ever go back to a single screen after this?
The thing is, if I went back, I would need something to cope with those cases when I needed a tablet or something a bit bigger, and so I'd end up looking for an iPad Mini or another tablet that did that space. Now I realise that I don't need a massive tablet. It doesn't have to be a really expensive one, but I need something for a stylus at the minimum. At which point, it's probably I probably will just shell out the money on it. So anyway, I'm very lucky that I can do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a great unit. I'm really, really happy with it.
Let's move on to a much smaller screen. So our next comparison is going to be again some things that we've had our hands on with. The Apple Watch Ultra, and we're going to compare that with the Watch 5 and the Classic 4. Is it?
Yeah, we'll talk about Samsung's
you've got,
side of that in a bit.
You mentioned the Watch 4 previously. It came kind of at a discount with your phone.
Yeah.
So I have an Apple Watch Ultra. I've had it for, well, I think since release day, actually. I think I got it on release day, so a few weeks now. Wow. And later on, I'm sure when Bobby comes on the podcast, you'll hear him talk about his one as well. We both got one on release day. I went for the Ocean strap, which is sort of this black spaghetti, like macaroni loops.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
Which is designed for sort of wetsuits and things like that. And it's
so
kind of
for scuba diving and stuff like that. So it's very rugged.
Yeah. I have to say, it is the best watch I've ever worn.
Wow.
Now, I'm by no means am I an extreme sports enthusiast. I do go to the coast every year and in a wetsuit and go sea swimming and paddleboarding and things like that, and rock spelunking and so on. But really, for me, the use case, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, is a bit more unique. I'm at work. I wear sports kit most of the day because I'm always teaching sport in the afternoons. And what I don't like having in my pocket is a phone flapping about, especially if I'm teaching hockey or rugby, where there's a chance I could break it on a hockey ball or on a getting hit by a ball. So I try and leave.
You've got rules on that, haven't you, as well? You've got rules. You're not meant to have phones on.
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? We're not meant to have phones in schools. I mean, that is a definitely. Right. I mean, my wife is not allowed a phone out in school. Right. Our school, we're not. We're a private school, so we're not part of the local education authority. But we have an issue in that we're a Windows school, and we had to go push to the highest level of security for our devices.
Oh, I see.
After a cyber intrusion, so it's such a pain. So I would say every sort of 3 or 4 hours, I have to authenticate my phone whenever I'm using a Windows app on whatever device it is. And I have to use the authenticator. And actually, it's a problem because we shouldn't have phones as well, but we can't use our Windows devices without some sort of access to authenticator.
Yeah, that's it. You need to
really
do two-factor.
God, it's so annoying the whole time. So that's, and actually, when people have questioned it, we have to come up with that reason. I don't tend to have my phone out very much in school anyway because I'm just dashing around so busy. So I wanted to. I tried this with the previous. I had a Series 6 previously, and I got, which was my first 4G watch, and I wanted to be able to take the watch out onto the pitch and have that. You've got to have, unfortunately, because of where we work, we have to have a phone with us for any accidents and issues.
Of course, yeah.
But having a 4G Apple Series 6 watch was great. I had a phone out there. The problem is where I work, we're in a very poor area for signal.
Right.
And any telecommunications device that is near a weak signal or looking for a mast to connect to, your radio antenna is using up a lot more battery when it's constantly shifting networks to try and find a connection. It's fine if you're in a really good 4G area. It fixes and it holds that signal, and the battery's not under such intense use. So what was happening?
I think that's just consistent with all schools, isn't it? It's just a school thing. I don't know how, but
it's really annoying. So I go out with 70 or 80% battery for the afternoon, and within an hour and a half, I was down to about 40 or 30%.
Oh wow!
And so the phone just wasn't. Sorry, the watch just wasn't making it through the day. So the Apple Watch Ultra, I mean, the battery on it is amazing. If I have my phone on me all the time, so I'm always connected via the watch, then the battery lasts. I mean, I've had it for nearly 3 days, down to the wick. And I tend to put the phone away completely now and just not have it on me at all. It's in school with me, but I just put it in a drawer and leave it. Even after a day's usage of it, constantly trying to connect to the 4G. By the evening, I'm still on 60%.
Okay, that's good.
So
that's proper multi-day battery life then.
When I've got my phone on me all the time, I'm down to 60% by about 4 p.m. the following day. So the battery is as Apple said, really, really good. In terms of its looks, I love the way it looks. It's not as big on your wrist as I imagined. It is bigger. I prefer the look of it to the smooth, rounded edges of the original Apple Watch. And I wonder if there were all those rumours a while back. Mark Gurman, just before the Series 7 came out, there were rumours of a straight-edged Apple Watch coming out. And I wonder if they were some sort of preliminary designs for the Ultra, because it has a flatter screen and this raised edge around the top to house the extra GPS antenna, but also as a lip, it protects the screen against scratching, because every other Apple Watch I've ever owned, I've scratched the screen. Just walking past
that rounded top,
if I walk past a brick wall and I'm swinging my arms around, I scratch it, and you cannot fix that. You can't go and...
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm loving that ruggedness. Good. I'm loving not worrying about that. I'm loving the fact that the waterproofing is even better for when I do go swimming. I haven't tested the depth app yet, but I'm looking forward to testing that out.
So it's got really, really good. So it's got really tough glass.
Yep, sapphire.
Is it titanium as well?
It's a titanium body. It's got a sapphire glass screen, and then the back of it is actually ceramic with rather nice. And I mean, it's got very much Johnny and I vibes here. Very nice. Which you don't have on the current Apple Watch, is very nice, full sort of steel like screws.
Oh yeah, they've really gone into that industrial design, haven't they?
So it actually feels more comfortable to wear. I think because it just fits the wrist better than the other one. The strap doesn't hang over the edge of my wrist as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it just feels a bit
and
snugger.
It's still. And I was going to say it's still the bespoke bands, so you have to get official ones.
You do, but I think my older Apple Watch, because I had the larger one, I had the 45 millimeters, 44 millimeters.
45, yeah.
This is 49. They still fit, so I can still use them.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's not too bad.
And I think you can still use third-party ones with it as well if you want to.
Oh, I see.
So I'm very pleased with that. And the action button. The action button, which is this button on the opposite side that's coloured international orange, international, danger, I don't know, is lovely. It looks really cool. But I do find, because I'm so used to using my old Apple Watch by squeezing both sides to squeeze the standard buttons,
I see.
that I tend to set it off quite often.
Right.
It's pretty cool, the action button. I tend to switch between having it as a shortcut for Shazam, because it's really good. If you're driving in the car and you hear a good track on radio, on 6 Music, I can just literally press that button and carry on. Whereas before I'd be, again, I think the law in the UK is a grey area about playing with your watch, because at the moment
it's still a distraction. Whereas
distraction.
If it's a button press, you can probably get away with it.
But obviously we can't. We're now it's very strict in our country on phones, very much stricter than it has been. So it's great to just be able to press that one button for Shazam. When I'm playing sport, I can change the action button to match any shortcut I program to my phone. Mm-hmm. There are a few things that don't work depending on the shortcut, but I have another shortcut that basically lets me start a 50-minute timer for matches, which was before I'd have to dive into the stopwatch app and do it manually. Now I can just press the action button.
Okay.
And I have a complication on my watch that shows the time counting down, so they work really well together. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I haven't really used any of the orienteering tools, the backtracking and so on.
Right.
But I do like the oceanic face, where you can tap the kind of the bezel, and it turns into a compass on your wrist. And what's really nice is if you hold the watch in your two fingers, as it hits north, you can feel a haptic click on the watch, so you know you've hit north.
Nice.
You can't feel it with your wrist. You feel it with your fingers holding the watch, like holding a compass.
Nice. Okay.
I have tested the siren. It is quite loud. We had a lot of noise in the changing room with the boys. I kid you not. Yeah. I turned the siren on in the changing room, and they thought the fire alarm was going off and started to leave the room.
God.
And so it's, the acid test is it louder than a bunch of screaming kids? Well, yes, they can hear it.
But it might have backfired, because
they all tried to leave.
Then there'll be mayhem.
Yeah. So just use with caution, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
No, I am very, very happy with it. I haven't tested the crash detection, and I haven't. No. I don't tend to wear it for sleep tracking, because it's quite bulky to wear in bed.
Yeah.
I use my old Apple Watch for sleep tracking now. It's basically a night watch.
That's a good idea, because then you don't have to worry about battery life either. So that's great.
I mean, my night watch never dips below 90, really, because I'm always just topping up as I use it.
The thing is, it wasn't really a problem
No.
until you were using it for the whole day, and then you wanted sleep, and then you wanted it to be ready by the time you could go out, and then that's always the problem.
I mean, you've got to remember the Apple Watches, they do charge quite quickly. Now, the Ultra comes with a fast charging wireless charger. It's nice because Apple are now moving over to all the braided cables, which are so much nicer and wear out less as well. So you have to connect it to a 20-watt plug to charge quickly.
That's good. That's a good rate, because that's actually double what Samsung do.
Yeah,
so that's good.
I mean, basically what you get is for that is the Ultra Watch that has a larger battery charges as quickly as the original Apple Watch with a smaller battery, because you're scaling up the battery, but you're scaling up the power to the watch as well.
Nice.
But the plug does not come with the watch. So all my plugs are connected to other things via USB-C, so I had to buy another plug for the watch as well, which is a bit of a pain. But they're about 20 quid. They're not expensive.
Yeah. Well, or if there's a USB-C
hub,
like if you got a spare one, I guess you could use that, because it would charge up to 20 watts.
Yeah. So no, really, really happy with it. I think in terms of future proofing, because of the battery life, I think I'll hold on to this for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And obviously you get all the apps, which is probably the main thing with Apple Watch, is that they've got loads of apps and great faces and all of that, and you get all of that working.
Yeah.
I guess you haven't had a diving app yet, have you?
Well, I mean, we plan to go swimming this weekend in my work pool.
Oh, okay.
Because it's something we do in the holidays. We can go and use the pool if we want to. It's quite deep. It's sort of 8 foot deep at the far end. So I'll test it out and see if it matches. I'll go and calibrate it.
I'm not sure what parts of it are, because I think some of that may be coming. I'll have to check, but I'm not sure whether the diving app is present.
I don't know if so it's got the depth app.
Oh, it has. Oh, good.
Yeah. Now the depth app, I'm looking at it now. You have to actually. It won't work until you go in water. It has it detects the water. The sensor detects the water, and then it starts to record it. So at the moment, when I look at it, it's just got the info saying to record depth, submerge Apple Watch. So the one you're talking about is a proper diving app.
Diving app. Oh, I see. Right.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it's called now, but it's being made bespoke. I think you have to pay for it as well.
Oh yes, that's right.
So it's not made by Apple. I think it's made in partnership. So it's kind of a professional thing then, rather than you using a big diving computer. You'd be able to use your Apple Watch.
which is like a really advanced feature. It's no other smartwatch has that. So
Yeah, and I think divers have used it, and they've said it's great as an all-rounder, but I'd still rather use my bespoke diving computers they wear on the wrist. But I think if you're looking for an all-rounder, and you're a kind of not a pro diver, but a dive enthusiast, I think that's quite a good middle ground.
yeah,
And the watch is designed for this slightly more, higher tier sports user. I mean, and that's why they built this what they call precision dual frequency GPS into it. So if you're a marathon runner and you're running a city run, a New York marathon, it will work better when you're at the base of skyscrapers. So you get better GPS with it.
It's more comparable to a
like the Garmin.
Garmin, like the some of the really advanced Garmins that they have, which can be like £900. So it's kind of more that than anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, the app that they're doing is in partnership with an underwater. They call them underwater innovators. They're called Whoish Outdoors, and it's called the Oceanic Plus app. And I think, I'll never get this because I'm not a diver. But what a great feature to have for people who are going to go no more than 100 meters down, because that's just how far down the watch can manage. Although, from what I've seen from people testing it, I saw someone testing it in a laboratory setup, like a depth bell that they set up in a laboratory. It can actually go deeper, but what the Apple Watch does is when it goes beyond a certain depth, it stops recording and says, right, if you go any deeper, you're going beyond what you really should be doing for your level of experience. So it's more of a safety feature to stop mid-level enthusiasts doing things that they shouldn't be doing and getting the bends and so on.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense? So and you can actually buy. I was looking at it today actually, because I do go in my wetsuit quite often when I go down to the coast. You can buy like a longer version of the strap. Which allows you to wear it over wetsuits, which I think is really cool as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really happy with it. I no regrets at all. I'm looking forward to all the extra features that come to it as it develops and finds itself in the world. Very, very happy with it. I think, again, I'm like you with the Fold. I'm not sure I can go back to the normal Apple Watch anymore either. So, but
do you think it's the battery life though? Because I think
for me,
yeah.
Yes, definitely. It's my number one feature. The battery life is amazing. Actually, I use it more for a telephone than I normally use my iPhone as well, because it's such a better sound. It's much clearer.
Okay. Because I can imagine that. I think if battery life's a problem, you just won't use it to its full. Whereas if battery life is as good as you say it is, then you would just use it a lot more and you get the real benefit from it. Yeah. So that's nice. That sounds really good.
I mean, wireless charging is not good for your battery. Over a long term, it degrades the battery. So what I'm finding is, at the end of the day, when I have I'm looking at it now, I've got 52% left, and it's late in the evening for us. I tend to put it on the charger when I'm in bed reading my book, and after I've read for about half an hour, 40 minutes, it's fully charged again. Yeah. I turn it off for the night. So I'm not leaving it on the charger overnight.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I think because you're only charging it half as much, it's not a full charge. You're extending its lifespan, because a lot of batteries are based on cycles of charges, aren't they? How many charges, like electric cars do. Yeah. So I'm wondering if just half charging it every day is a better way, less intense on the battery than a full charge.
To an extent, but also you've got more in the tank if it degrades a bit. Yeah. So it's not as much of a problem. Yeah. Whereas beforehand it would be it can't get through a day. I've just got to replace it. Whereas now it'll be actually it's still working great.
Well, let's hope.
Now I've got 40%.
Yeah, let's hope that will last longer than I have to pay for it. So because it's not a cheap watch, I mean, in the UK it's 850 quid. That's 150 pounds. That's a lot. Which is again, I use it more than my iPhone now. Really.
I think the thing is nowadays people spend more money on smartphones and things like that, and smartwatches. They used to spend that on watches and nice things like that. So it's not too different. I just think the only thing is sometimes these things we've got into a yearly cycle somewhat unnecessarily. So so sometimes you kind of you see an incremental improvement, and then you think, nah, it's not worth it. Whereas this is like a sizable change and real difference. So this is a good time to sort of go, yeah, okay, I'm getting real benefit from
I
that.
don't generally follow the year cycle, so I tend to upgrade.
You wouldn't
my
have
phones.
got the 8, for example, the Series 8.
No.
That's the latest one.
No.
Yeah, fair enough. And
I mean, I think
because although the battery might be slightly better, you're probably not going to see most of that difference.
No, and I don't really adhere to the 1 year cycles. I try and hold on to my devices longer now, just because.
Good.
Environmentally, I think it's a bit better, but also financially, it's a bit better as well, because you have a good period of time where you're just paying for the extra.
Yeah, it used to be more affordable. That's my excuse.
Yeah,
that's my excuse. It used to be more affordable, and it's less affordable now. No, it sounds awesome. Unfortunately, it's a watch that I can't get because I'm not an Apple user. Although interestingly, I did actually find that Apple do have a feature called family sharing.
Yeah.
Basically, it's for your kids who you won't buy an iPhone for. You can pair your your Apple Watch with some, daddy's iPhone.
I'm thinking of actually doing that with my son. Actually, so I've got my night watch that I use. We probably will have to get him a phone eventually as he goes to secondary school and has to travel. But we're finding my wife has got a more intense job, which takes up more of her time. We're finding childcare a lot more of an issue with his school finish and so on. So I'm quite tempted to add him to my contract on the Apple Watch so that he can just use that to get home with and to leave school with and whack it in the box.
That's not a bad idea, because that's the peace of mind that you're really
and
doing
it's cheaper
with
than
the
buying a new phone at this stage.
Yeah.
So
it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'd appreciate going on your phone as your.
Well, I have unlimited data, so it's not a problem. But I know what you mean.
Fair enough.
So
yeah, that's cool.
Let's talk about the other watches. So the Watch 5 and the Classic 4. You're going to have to help me here, Alex, because I'm not sure what the difference is.
Yeah, so I'll kind of explain it, but basically when I looked at the Apple Watch, I forgot what it's called now.
Ultra,
that's it.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember the superlative because it was like Max or Pro.
Yeah, there's loads of them up there.
But yeah, so this was the right. So I was looking at that, and the thing is, basically just before Apple did this announcement, there was a Samsung update, and so they updated their smartwatch, and I have the Samsung. It's always Galaxy, so Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. And the thing that makes it classic is obviously it looks a bit more traditional, but also it has a bezel on it now.
Is the bezel the interface, the input, then the control input?
Yeah, it can be. You doesn't have to be because you can swipe left and right as well. It's touchscreen, but yeah, it's nice. The bezel is really nice. It's like having your what's the word? And the Apple one.
The crown.
The crown. It's like having a crown basically, but it's just done very different. But yeah, so I had this since I had the S21 Ultra actually, which was about a year or so ago, and this was one of the first Google Wear OS.
So that's the OS for it then.
Yeah. So basically, Google. Traditionally, Samsung went their own way and built their own operating system, and everyone was really going, "Well, look, it's great, but we really want Wear OS instead, because that's the Google's Android-based watch system, and there's good apps on it, and it's sort of quite good." So we were like, "Well, look, when Samsung comes over, then it's worth getting." And then they basically had this big announcement last year where they said, "We're working together now." And Samsung basically had an exclusive deal for 12 months. So the Watch 4 and the Watch 4 Classic, which is one I've got, are all on the new version, and they have a new chip. It's like very good at battery life. So it's really comparable, sort of functionally, with the Apple Watch.
Yeah.
So it lasts a similar amount of time. My one has the biggest battery on it, and it lasts about a day and a half, and it has a great OLED screen.
You've got the 4, have you?
Yeah, so I had the 4, And it's got all of the sensors that you'd expect on the back. This is actually a titanium case, which is surprising because you wouldn't think of that. But yeah, so it's a titanium case, and because it's recessed, it is Gorilla Glass, but it's not sapphire glass like the one that you have.
Probably more resistant to damage than the standard Apple Watch because of that recessed bezel area.
Yeah, because it's recessed bezel, it actually does make a difference because you're more likely to scratch the bezel than
it looks more recessed
else.
than the Watch 5's face, actually.
Yes, so the Watch 4 actually bought for Amy, and her main complaint was the battery life wasn't great on it.
Yeah.
So when I got the Fold and it came with £100 discount, and there was the option to trade in your smartphone, I kind of put those two together, and it ended up costing less than £100 to get the Watch 5 for Amy, and battery life's no longer an issue for her. So that's great.
The hand-me-down Watch 4, did you?
Well, I kept my watch because
right.
I just traded in the old one for Amy. But I kept mine because I love the bezel. And when you look on the Samsung website, they've got the Watch 5 Pro, but the big thing that they've done is they've killed the bezel. So it's now basically it's a software bezel. So there's an area, it's like still recessed, and then that's touch sensitive.
So around the outside, the black rim.
Around the outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the thing is, behind the scenes, it's actually using the same chip because the chip itself is really good. The only difference was that the Watch 5 had slightly better battery, had a bigger battery, and also there was a temperature sensor, which the way it works, I think it's similar on Apple, but they put it in the hardware before they've got the software ready for it, and then they have to go through certification and all that kind of stuff. So eventually that will probably become a like extra data for the period tracking app.
Yeah, cycle tracking.
So that's what it will probably go towards.
So what's the difference between the Galaxy Watch 5 and the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro?
So the only main difference between it is it's a bigger watch. It's titanium instead of like aluminium. Yeah. Like you've got you have with yours, and sapphire glass instead of like normal glass. Yeah. But the main thing is visually they're quite different because the Pro is the biggest watch, and I like having fairly big watches. Yeah. So this is a 45mm face, just like your old
series.
Just like your I think it's 46.
Yeah.
Just like your old Apple Watches, whereas the Watch 5 is a bit smaller, so it's 44, and it's very much similar to. So if you have a smaller wrist, it would work quite nicely.
Well, also I think the circular face, I think, which so many people have been crying out, and so many Apple fans are crying out for a circular watch face for the Apple Watch. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think the circular face means you can have a bigger watch on a wrist, but it doesn't seem as big on your wrist. Does that make sense?
That's right. It doesn't feel as big. It certainly doesn't feel clunky. And the thing is, most people don't even recognise it as a smartwatch because it just looks like a watch mostly. And so it has things like an always-on display if you want it, which I quickly switched off because if you do that, your battery life takes a dive. Yeah. But the reality is, when you look up to look at it, it turns on. So it's just like the Apple Watch in that respect.
I mean, I like my always on display on my watch.
It's nice to have. It's really good.
It doesn't have any effect on the battery for me as well, which is good.
That's good.
They're nice watches. You know, I think if I was going away from Apple, these would be the ones I go for. I looked at there's a new Pixel watch, isn't there, that's come out recently. And my concern is it's a dome of glass that will just basically scratch within seconds. At least these ones have had a bit of thought about usability and design. I imagine that they ditched the physical bezel because they're just trying to maybe minimise the number of moving parts or breakable parts.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it is waterproof still, but I think that's just an area of complication that they thought. The challenge is it's something that I don't use very often. I don't use this bezel very much, but when I do, it's so fulfilling. It's like
lovely, isn't it? It's a nice little action. That.
So, and I think that's the thing. That's why you still have your crown. You probably don't need it. You could just do it in the software very easily. But I think it's because it's one of those nice features.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is, you know, the Watch 5 and the Pixel Watch, they're a lot cheaper. So
170 quid.
It's not that expensive. That's for the smallest, but even the larger one is like just under £400.
Yeah.
That's not cheap at all.
Still cheaper than Apple
but
Watch,
given that the table stakes are now 450, 500 for a normal watch. I mean, I spec'd up an Apple Watch, because I thought, you know what, I'll have a go. I'll have a look and see what a watch would be like. And I would go for the larger size.
Yeah.
I would go for the stainless steel case, which does look nice, and a leather case, and that's like £800. And I know it's a fashion.
Steel.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's my mistake. Maybe I should have just gone down to aluminium. But yeah, so it's one of those things. I think comparatively, you're getting good value for money with the Android ones.
Yeah.
But it just comes down to what phone you use. Ultimately, if you use an Android phone, you're better off getting an Android smartwatch.
Yeah.
And if you use an Apple phone, you have to use an Apple Watch anyway, Apple thing.
Yeah.
And it's annoying that we have to make that choice, but that's just the way it is.
So, we have talked about a tablet-style device this evening in this podcast because of your foldable phone. But
yes,
let's look at the kind of the industry standard tablets. We're going to look at the iPad. Now, there are two iPads that have been recently announced.
That's right.
So the base iPad and the iPad Pro. I think let's start with the base iPad. I don't know what Apple are doing here. I think there must have been a change in their strategy here, because first of all, the new base level iPad is a very nice device. Well, don't get me wrong. I think it's really nice. It currently has the best keyboard of all the devices, because you get a keyboard that can be removed without removing the kickstand. You get a keyboard with F buttons, which the Magic Keyboard does not have on the iPad Pro. I'm a little bit frustrated that actually now that the base level iPad has a better keyboard than the Pro, which doesn't seem to make sense. The screen is better. It's an all screen. It's a slightly larger screen. I think it's gone to 10.9 inches now. So it's
because this is replacing the 9th gen
the 9.7
iPad.
inch one. Yeah,
9.7. Sorry, and this is replacing the old style.
Yeah.
It was the last holdout of the old style design.
Yeah.
So, but you're paying a fair price for this new style.
Well, this
you're
is
basically getting an Air, aren't you?
I mean, my concern is, and my school a few years ago, we started off by buying banks of iPads for our children. We've moved now to Surface Go devices for them.
Okay.
Because we're a Windows school and it just worked better with our Office 365 ecosystem.
Yeah.
But my concern is that Apple are pricing themselves out of education. Now, I know they're not big proponents of education. I know they're not. That's not their biggest drive. I know plenty of schools that their way forward is with iPads, and I think this is going to be a problem because the unit cost for these has gone up considerably. If you're buying 20, 40 or 60 of these, that's a massive increase in price.
It used to be like
$329
each.
I mean, we get educational discount. If you buy in bulk, they come down to about $249 each.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you'll get a discount still, but I just think this is... I think maybe Apple are moving away from enterprise in that respect. I don't know. It just
They're certainly pricing themselves out of it.
Well, if you think about the cost of the device, I'm going to order one now, so I can see how much it will cost. So if I spec up what I think will be a school entry level version, so I'm going to just go for the silver ones at 64 gig, which is not a great starting size anyway, 64 gigabytes. That you'll lose a lot of that for just the OS and the Apple standard apps. Just do the Wi-Fi version. You then need to add, if you're going to add the Apple Pencil, it's another £100.
Can we talk about that though?
Yeah,
because the Apple Pencil that it works with is the first gen one.
Yeah,
that only works with Lightning.
Yes. Now, there is no Lightning connector on this. It's USB-C only. So whereas before, my daughter has the previous generation of this iPad she got for Christmas.
I used to have an old iPad.
Yeah. So her one,
with
she
a
still
pencil.
She charges by putting the pencil in the end through the Lightning connector. And she can do that. It makes sense because it's a mobile device. It's, carry it around with you. Her case has a little slot for her pen, so because she likes doing artwork on it. And so if she needs to charge it, she just plugs it into the bottom of her iPad for 15 minutes or so, and it charges again, or even like 5 minutes just to top it up. Now what you have to do is you have to get an Apple Pencil adapter, which is
it's a dongle, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean I had one with when I got my first iPad Pencil. I got the original one when it was before the new one came out.
Right.
It's a USB-C to Apple Pencil adapter, so you can still plug it into your device, but that's another tenner for that. All right, so I'll add that onto the price now. Now, if you want to get the keyboard to go with it, right, the Folio, it's called the Magic Keyboard Folio for iPad 10th generation. All right, I'll add that as well. Okay, so this is the base level iPad, and at the moment I've got dollars here rather than pounds, so you got to add another, I don't know, £50 to £60 on this. But I'm now currently, without Apple Care, at $707.
Yeah.
So this is almost the price of the 11-inch Pro was, about £1,000.
Yeah.
It's no longer an entry-level device, and that's only the 64 gig. If I change it to the 256 gig, and Apple charge a royal premium for storage, I'm now up to $857.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that's the same cost as my watch, but if you're a school and you want to get all the bits to go with it, that's too expensive. I just wonder what they're doing here. They've lost their cheap iPad completely.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, I think what they did. I'm just trying to compare this, but we'll talk about Android in a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, a part of me thinks that they went through a phase where their 2-year-old chips were a lot cheaper, and they put them into the old frame.
Well, they'd use bin chipping, wouldn't they?
Exactly. And that's it. So they could get them at a discount, and that was a big part of the cost.
Yeah.
And I think expectations have kept rising a bit, which is probably is the issue.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you think about why would you choose this over an Air?
Yeah.
Because an Air has a better camera, it will have a better processor. It works with the keyboard cover, not the Folio one, but there's a keyboard cover. It's also older, so you can get second-hand and refurbished ones a lot easier. So, why would you choose this? It's the bit that I can't understand.
Yeah, because... I mean, as a teacher, for me, really, the Air is a much more user-friendly device in the classroom because the pencil connects magnetically to the side. The second generation pencil, it has the laminated display, which you don't get on the baseline one, which is so much nicer having that laminated display.
Yeah,
and the anti-reflective coating and so on.
But they should have just basically made.
Again,
I mean, what they've done is they've made a version of the Air that's slightly cheaper.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have any of the good bits, and that's the problem. Is when you look at it, you end up. It's not prompting me to buy an Air. It's prompting me to give up.
Well, the Air has the M1 chip as well. So you're getting the M1 chip on the Air for.
There's a lot
I'm
more.
going to buy an Air now as well. I'm going to do the comparison because I think there's not much in it. Because I think the Air starts at $599. That's not that much more, is it really?
No, I mean Apple. To be fair, one of the things they're good at is they're really good at crafting their prices to always make you want to buy more.
Yeah.
To go to the next one, and they should probably just be honest and say, yeah, that's what we've done here. we've our lowest iPad is now actually getting quite expensive.
Okay, so I've chosen the purple 64 gig Wi-Fi iPad Air with Apple Pencil, the second gen, the better one, and the Smart Keyboard Folio for iPad Air, and that is
which you can probably get cheaper on eBay.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's $907. That's only about £180 more.
Yeah,
and if you're paying monthly, that's £5 more a month.
Yeah.
So
and you can find it on eBay a lot cheaper than that. So if you wanted to get one, you could easily get one.
Yeah, I mean, if you go for the 256, you're hitting over 1,000. But it's as a considered buyer, I don't know why you'd buy the baseline one. We are going to compare with Samsung. Don't worry. Let's just very quickly go to the iPad Pro. Now, I'm even more bemused by this.
Yes.
Now, if you haven't yet bought into if you've got a very old iPad Pro that isn't the new design, the new hardware, then maybe this is a good idea. And I know Apple, there'll always be people out there that are in that situation. And it's, look, don't get me wrong, it is an amazingly good device, the iPad Pro. You've got
the M1, haven't you?
I've got I'm the one previous to the M1. I've got the 2020 one.
Oh, right.
Was that 2018? I can't remember. I've got the one that wasn't the first micro LED screen with the M1 in, which I think Bobby has. So the new iPad Pro is an M2 chip, which is astonishing performance for the size and the power usage. And there's lots of tech specs here that I won't bore people with. It's got the same great screen, liquid Retina XDR display. The screen is amazing on these. Again, there's not that much in it. Again, Apple do this kind of the hook. They always have a story about it. And the hook here is, and the camera is a bit better as well on it, but the hook here is this hover feature, which...
Yeah, I don't understand this because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, you can already...
It doesn't sound like a feature.
Well, you can already use it. I mean, if you did delve down into the accessibility features, you can use kind of a pared down version of this already to help people with any sort of input issues. And you can highlight and sort of pop-ups appear when you hover within the accessibility features. Now they're basically turning it into a fully fledged feature. And I think there's a slightly different sensor or something under the screen that allows this. So as long as your Apple Pencil is maximum of 12 millimeters away, it can kind of interpret the position of you're holding your pencil in 3 dimensions. Right. I'm trying to think how this... Apple always have a plan ahead. And is this going to be used in something else? Will they be using it, for instance, in AR, where actually you can touch something and see it from the screen? Does that make sense? Imagine if when Apple bring out their AR glasses and you've got your iPad in front of you and the AR glasses produce a 3D display on your iPad, and then the Apple Pencil can actually adjust and play with the depth and the features in 3D. Maybe this is moving towards that.
I just don't think it's a feature because the thing is that people are used to navigating in 3 dimensions. And firstly, using touch is probably the most intuitive. But then also, so there might be times when you need a pencil to highlight something. I don't see it as a benefit. It's like when I've got a stylus hovering over the thing, I normally see a little dot anyway. I'm probably about 0.3. I'm probably about 3 mil away. Probably not as high up as they're saying. But really, is it? I mean, unless you can do something with it, like so, the depth makes a difference. Well, I don't see why that.
What
would
Apple
help.
are touting here is, for instance, if you're in an art program like Procreate, you can get a preview of what your. And I mean, this is the only feature I can think of that I would use. You can get a preview of your paintbrush size, and you can shrink and reduce it and increase it on the screen before you touch the screen, right. Which is quite a nice idea. But to be honest, if you're wiping your finger up and down the settings, you can see that actually on the screen anyway when you adjust the settings. I am struggling to see how I would use it. I'm
just hovering my stylus over my thing, because when you get your stylus close, you do see a dot. And do you know what it's about? It's about 12 millimeters. And I haven't called it a fancy feature. It's just guiding me to where the thing is. Yeah. So I just, that's the bit that's really throwing me, is I don't know the big deal about it.
Yeah.
And I just don't think they've done a good job of explaining it. And also it's probably not a big feature.
No.
But the other part of it is, the M2 chip is really powerful. I mean, it's used in laptops. My work laptop will have one in it. Yeah. It's like, it's really as powerful as like, the latest Intel processors and stuff. Now, the thing is, what are you actually doing in the iPad that needs all of that oomph? Because it's not like the M1 iPad was slow. It wasn't. And it's like iterating for iterating's sake.
Well, I think,
of course, the price will bump up a little bit, won't it?
I think there are a few features that having an M2 makes better than having an M1 or having the old Bionic chips, in that Pro users, because this is a Pro device, Pro users will connect their studio displays to this, because you can actually have external displays to your iPad. They will.
Yes, but that's really a software feature. It's not hardware.
Well, yes,
because you're thinking about the computational improvement of the app. It's not a. So that's the bit that throws me.
Well, if you want to have higher 8K screens attached to it, if you want to be able to crunch ProRes RAW a little bit quicker, if you want to, the big problem that Apple are having right now is having a real issue with one of their software features, which is called Stage Manager. Which allows this sort of multitasking, multi-screen display. They're having to step back a little bit because a lot of people complained. They've gone quiet on that, haven't they? Well, a lot of people complained because there are a lot of people who just bought the pre-M1 iPads or only had them for 6 months who won't be able to use this feature because it's an M1 upwards feature. It'll work on my M1 Mac as well. And the M2 chip will allow more screens in multitasking than the M1, and I think the M2 chip will allow external displays, whereas I don't think even the M1 will allow that now. They've kind of stepped it back a bit.
Most of that's relevant to the laptops, and it's partly to do with how they created the chip, because like the thing is, you don't need to have the fastest computer chip to run these screens. It's just that they flowed everything through the chip to make it really simple. And then they just went, oh no, we'll stop at 1, and that's why we didn't have that. Whereas a PC manufacturer might have just said, well, how many can it cope with? Oh, it can cope with 2, right? Put two in. Well, I think the iteration is annoying. I definitely agree.
I think what Apple are now doing is they're doing a little bit of a U-turn, and they're allowing Stage Manager on pre-M1 devices. Yes. But to do that, they've had to turn off external display features.
Right.
So they've kind of made the lower tier Pro users happy and annoyed some of the higher tier ones, if that makes sense.
Okay.
At a balance.
But that's okay. I mean, now, I just, if you're a power iPad Pro. Yeah, if I'm a power iPad Pro user, I've probably got a 16-inch MacBook Pro next to it.
Yeah, or a Mac Studio
I'm going to
device.
just move, or Mac Studio. I'm going to just move it over to and do my processing on that. So that was my point, because there is a limit to how much. The same with the camera. They showed this video of this filmmaker using it in a jig,
it looked ridiculous.
Which was ridiculous because it's just in the way, and I could see it working with an iPhone in a gimbal, because the thing with that is, it's actually stabilized.
It's more like a GoPro in its size and its usability,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but I just can't understand why that's a feature that.
It looked like one of we have these little bouncy net things for cricket where you can throw a ball at them. It looked like one of those. I think.
Anyway,
I think we're going to have to. I want us to move on to the Samsung devices. I think we have to keep our eyes open here, because having listened and read about the problems, the bugs with Stage Manager, even up in recent beta releases up to a week ago, I don't know how Apple are going to release Stage Manager in any sort of usable state. Apparently the bugs are crazy. I'm pretty confident they'll get it ironed out by the time they release it, because they have to, because all the new devices will come with 16.1 and Ventura already on them, which is the Ventura is the new Mac OS desktop. So they're going to have to get it sorted. I'm quite looking forward to using Stage Manager on my M1 Mac, actually. But they may even release it as you have to turn this feature on, and by default it'll be off, and you turn it on as an option to kind of push it under the carpet a little bit, because it's been a bit of a thorn in the Apple side over the last 5 months as they developed it. But let's now compare that and talk about the your Samsung Tab S8 Plus. Do you still have that? Is that one you sold?
So I traded it in, actually. I sold it recently because I realised I wasn't using it, and I could use that towards my phone. I guess the Fold is a phone. So that's gone now. So I had a Samsung Galaxy Tab for 2 years, the Galaxy Tab S7, and then I upgraded to the S8 Plus, which is a slightly larger version. probably best. It doesn't quite compare with the iPad Pro, so it's probably not worth sort of using it because it won't. It's probably closest to the Air in terms of its specs, and because it has the latest Snapdragon processors. It has good cameras if you wanted it. I never used them, but that was it. It had a great AMOLED screen, just like you do on the thing. It come with 128 gig of space as standard, but it had an SD card, so you didn't need any extra space really. You could just put an SD card in there, and it would be perfect. And it could come with cellular or Wi-Fi. And there was things like a keyboard case, and so it's quite comparable with what we're talking about with the iPad, the new iPad / the Air, because they're quite similar. And no, honestly, Android tablets, there haven't been great history of Android tablets, but Samsung have just been plugging away at what the top spec tablet should look like. And they've just really refined it now. So it has, really nice narrow bezels. It has a camera the camera was landscape, just like the new iPad will be. So which is lovely, but it's not that. It's not rocket science. Just put it there because most people use it landscape. And it works with a stylus and includes a stylus in the pack, which is why I got it. And it just runs all of the programs impeccably, like really runs all the apps, no problem at all. And as a media device, it's brilliant. So yes, you can use it for Netflix, and it's really great watching experience. I've used it as a alternative for my laptop. So we went on holiday and I didn't want to take my laptop, but I did want to take something in case I had to do anything work-wise.
So something more for media consumption or more for work-based?
So I wanted something that if I had to take a call, like a work call, or I had to do a bit of editing so I could do it. And so what I did is instead of taking my laptop, which is really chunky and big, I just took the tablet with a keyboard cover. It worked. The keyboard cover and case work exactly as the iPad, new iPad unveils. So it's not rocket science. It's been done before. But anyway, and so I took that with me, and then it turned out that I needed to update my CV. So I was sitting on the beach, and I happened to have my tablet with me. So I just opened the tablet, sitting on the beach, did a bit of updates, then sent that over, and then went back to my sunbathing. So it did work. It's not a great idea of a holiday. No, that's a different matter. But it worked. It worked really nicely, and so that it was really good. I could, if I wanted to, I could connect a USB cable and mirror it to a TV without any problem. In fact, I could do that.
Plug in I see that some of the offers when you buy one of these is the SSD T7, the Samsung external.
You can
add storage to it as well.
If you want to have a big chunky hard drive in there, you can do that. I didn't need to, because what I ended up doing was it has an SD card slot, so I just put I think it was a 512 SD card in and just copied it to that. And
what storage have you got with this one that comes with it? Is it a 256 or 128? You went for?
No, I went with the 128 one because what you can do is the SD card can be used for your media. And then so anything big, you just say, "Oh, can you save that to the SD card, please?" Right. And then all your apps just sit on the device. So I never had any problems with space. And we had a whole conversation about this in a previous pod about my offline experience, but it wasn't a problem, space wise. That worked really well. So anyway, and so the fact is, like now, for example, you could trade in a tablet. You're guaranteed at least 150, but I traded in my old one and I got like almost 500 quid because of Samsung's generous discounts. And then what else? They throw in, at the moment, they're throwing in 12 months of Disney, and a book cover keyboard, which does the same job. It has a keyboard and a cover.
Which is great to get a free one when you think about how much.
Do you know what? You know, and it includes a stylus already, so you don't have to pay for that. And so that's the thing. When you look at that as a package, it works really nicely. But again, it's all just about which ecosystem you're in. So if you're in Apple's ecosystem, there's going to be synergies of reasons why you want to choose Apple. If you're an Android, it's really hard to get into Apple because you end up having to buy things again, and then things get complicated between Apple and non-Apple, and sometimes Apple says no, you must have an Apple device, and so it's things like that which can work, but they're not as nice. And I think actually having the alternative isn't a bad idea for a media consumption device. So if you've got an iPhone, for example, having an Android tablet isn't a bad thing. It will work. It'll work quite nicely. It'll probably talk to your TVs and stuff a lot easier as well. Yeah. So there can be some benefits. I went
to the cruise, and I think looking at what the TV in our room, in our call them state rooms, could cope with the Android offerings, where it was much more compatible with the Android offerings than the Apple stuff.
Yeah, because they use what's called Miracast. It's given different names or different devices.
I think you download an app, don't you? Miracast app on your device. And then
you don't have to have an app. No. You can just on Android you just
built in,
say I want to, as long as you're in the same Wi-Fi, you say I want to mirror to that screen, and it just says okay, and it thinks about it for a bit. And then it mirrors, and then you can just switch the tablet screen off, and then just watch it through the TV. So I've done that both wirelessly and with a cable. So it can work. Whereas obviously Apple, it's Apple World, so you need to have an Apple TV to connect to and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I think actually as a tablet, it's a really good. I would definitely recommend it. I just don't need it anymore. But
yeah, I just think it's a shame that we can't cross-fertilize as much, and I think that's because they want us to stay in their ecosystems.
I personally, I used to have all Apple stuff. So I had a MacBook, I had an iPhone 3G, and then I went all the way up to the iPhone 8 or 9, I think. But so I've had Apple software for quite a while on Apple devices, and I really like them, but they're just becoming more closed. And I wish that there was some rules on all platforms that said that you had to put effort into making it an open ecosystem.
Well, that's happening a little bit with the USB-C rulings in Europe, and I don't actually think UK are part of that. So they don't have to become. So Apple are being forced to change from Lightning in their phones to USB-C by 2024, I think.
2024. Yeah, they won't. It's not far away. No. They'll just have to put it in the next one.
It's happening already anyway. With the new iPads.
They were going to do it, but for the iPhone, for some reason, they just had this resistance to doing it. Partly because there's lots of hotel devices that have those docks and stuff, and they didn't want to admit defeat, I guess.
I think they might even go down the route of on the phones of having no connectors whatsoever and just do everything wireless, which would be a shame because I do have wireless chargers, but I tend to plug into, again, Thunderbolt or the 20-watt chargers for my phone because it's so quick. I can get up to 80% in 20 minutes, which is brilliant, which you just can't do with wireless. So I'd be upset to lose the connector. I'd quite like to see USB-C connector on the iPhone, to be honest.
I think it will come in the next one, but I think it will come to other markets because Apple won't do an EU version. I just don't think they'll do it. No. But I do think that they're doing it begrudgingly, and you won't see like any massive hoo-ha about it. It'll just be and now we've got USB-C. Yeah,
a bit like the way they released the PR for these two new iPads. It was just a video online.
Well, they didn't. They were talking about whether to do to do an event, and I think they felt like it wasn't enough to do it. And
they actually announced a new Apple TV as well.
They did,
which I'm quite tempted by because the new ones allow you to arc your audio from your PlayStation through your HomePod speakers.
Oh, I see.
Which I could be tempted to do in the next one, but again, I don't need to replace my Apple TV 4K. It's brilliant.
No.
But we won't go into that. So I think we're going to round up there, Alex. I think you'll agree. We've
yeah, I agree.
I think it's
we've covered
really
it a lot.
interesting comparison. I think I'm just really impressed by the offerings that Galaxy have on top of your basic device. Just the trade-ins and the extra free things are so much better than what Apple offer for their devices. Apple are so confident in their tech and their prices. They don't offer. I think the mobile phones offer a bit of Disney Plus here and there, but that's the contractors and not the hardware. I'm just impressed with what Samsung offer as a sweetener, and I didn't realise that.
Yeah,
you know,
they are. I mean, inherently they are a bit more complicated than an Apple device because Apple tends to have a certain way of doing things.
Yeah, and as I get older, I'll probably find that that's easier for me just to stick with Apple because of the.
but it's not hard to use. You know, no. I've given a Samsung S22 to mother-in-law, and she's sort of 65.
Yeah,
and the main reason I did that was because it was good. It was good performance because she hasn't got like a cheap one, and I think that's the problem with Android devices is that people often just get the really cheap stuff and then wonder why it doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's just because it's underpowered.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been given enough resources. That's one of the good things about Apple is that they don't really do underpowered stuff. They always make sure that even their lowest versions
are very
are smooth and quick. And so, I totally understand that. But if you pay anywhere near Apple prices and you look at the what you get for Android, you can find them. You just have to look a bit more. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's do a bit of housework. You can find us on, whenever we release a new podcast, we tweet it out there at our Twitter account, which is at PlayPauseTurn. And we do the odd live event. We did a live watch along of June a while back. We might do some more of those. You can find me at John PR Evans, and you can find Alex at
Alex Hansford.
And there's also, if you are going to add our podcast to your podcast catchers, our URL is playpauseturn.show. So all different ways of listening to us and communicating with us. And we hope to go back to our usual sort of podcasts with more of the gang as time goes on. We've got lots of things to talk about coming up. And
we have a lot of TV to round up.
A lot of TV, a lot of season finales popping up. So watch this space for those coming up. In the meantime, this has been Play Paul's Turn, and thank you for listening.